want to know some things that you did with your scouts.
They called me to be the scoutmaster. I was never a scout myself, but I knew that the church had embraced the scouting program, and so I embraced it wholeheartedly. It was our goal to create as many Eagle Scouts as possible. At that time, I owned a motorhome, and we would take this motorhome and go on outings. We went through all the experiences at Bodega Bay up to Lake Berryessa, hunting for snipes. This was a great group of kids. And then the second group came along and we went on some adventures. They came to me one day and they said, "We want to have a manhunt." I said, "Okay, what's a manhunt?" And they said, "Well, we'll go out into the hills and you can hunt us down. And if you catch one of us, in order to show that you've caught us, we'll cut a little cross on our hand right here with a knife."
Instead of you scalping them?
Yeah. And I said, "No, I don't think your parents would go for that kind of procedure." I said, "If I catch you, what we will do is we'll cut your hair." And this was a time and season where all the teenagers, the young kids, had long hair. Came almost down to their shoulders. They said, "Oh no, that'll be terrible." So anyway, I said, "No, those are the rules."
This is in 1976.
1976. So we picked out a place to go, and the way we set it up is that early the next morning at daylight, they were supposed to hike up to a peak that was probably a mile away, and I was supposed to then try to hunt them down. Well, we got out there and got it set up, and I thought they would go to sleep, and then I could get up early in the morning and catch a couple of them while they were still asleep, but they never went to sleep all night long. They conspired that if I caught one of them, that all of the others would come to the rescue. That's in fact what happened. Early the next morning, about daybreak, I snuck up to the campfire quietly, which they were standing around at 5 o'clock in the morning and had been up all night. As they started out, I grabbed one of them, and immediately they all turned and piled on me, and there was about, 10 or 12 of them. They rescued their fellow scout and proceeded on their way, and I actually went back to bed and slept for a little while because I knew that there was no chance of catching one of them early on. To backtrack on the story a little bit, when we left the church parking lot, I had a little pony. I put a saddle on the pony, and then on each of the saddle strings, I tied a pair of pinking shears. And those are the kind of shears that cut a jagged pattern. This told them that I meant business. Was going to cut their hair off, and it was going to be jagged when I got done. So anyway, had the horse up there. Trigger, yeah. They were all standing around down in a group, kind of talking things over and wondering where I was. So I got on Trigger, and I come charging out of the forest on the dead run. I was screaming at the top of my voice, and they all scattered. And one of them, I think it was Tom Hawks, he jumped over a barbed wire fence that was that tall, and he jumped over it head first and landed on the other side, so I couldn't get aim. Ty Davies climbed up an old apple tree to get away, so I stopped and tied the horse up. I would climb up the tree, and he would go out on the branch. So then I would climb back down and go out to where the branch was coming down so he couldn't get away. If you've ever tried to climb out on a branch until it bowed down and then climb back up the branch, it's a struggle. Finally he gave out because I would keep chasing him out on the branch, go back around, and he'd have to climb back up. So I caught him, and I was gonna cut his hair, and he started to cry. So I thought, well, maybe I shouldn't cut his hair. And then they'd all scattered. A couple of them, I think Craig Frame and Ronnie and Tom Hawks, Robbie Jones, and Jeff Hoskins. They'd positioned themselves up a little wash that actually had a at the top of it had a cliff, and there was a bunch of rocks up there. They planned that if I came up this wash to get them, they were going to roll rocks down on me. I could see where they were, and they could not see me. I could hear them talking. They couldn't stand to be still. They had to talk all the time. So I could locate them if I would just be still and listen. So I go climbing way out around this setup that they had for me, came up just a little above them and came in from the side. I got 10, 15 yards away from where they were. And so then I made a mad charge into the group, and I was screaming at the top of my voice, "Gotcha, gotcha." And Craig and Ronnie had already figured out an exit strategy. And so they went across a big rock slide to get away. But Tom Hawks hadn't thought that through, so he just jumped over the cliff.
And so did Robbie Jones.
And Robbie Jones did too. So they jumped over the cliff. But anyway, when Tom Hawks landed, it knocked him out. So I decided, well, maybe this game is a little too rough. And he came to. Anyway, we put an end to the game, but since that time, several of these scouts have grown up and become scoutmasters themselves. And they remembered the adventures that we had in Napa, California, and some of them even tried to implement similar things. One of them told me that he had to be called in by his bishop and wanted to know what were these things that they were taking these scouts through, because we don't do that nowadays. And I think that was Norm Sorensen when he was the scoutmaster. So was Tom Hawks. Anyway, this was a great time. One of the adventures these guys did, they all went to early morning seminary. Then after seminary, they would come up to my house and try to jump on the back of my truck. So I got the hose out on Eric Frame, caught him in the back of the truck and hosed him down.
With his school clothes on, ready to go to school?
Yeah, he had his school clothes on, ready to go to school, and he had his books with him. He probably never forgot that, but they would get on the back of this truck, and that was dangerous. So what I would do is I would go up the road until I found a tree that was really close to the road, and then I would back the truck into the tree and smash him. Anyway, this was great sport for these kids.
So you backed into the tree and smashed them so that it wouldn't be dangerous with them being on the back of the truck.
Yeah.